Howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel. Now, I've seen a lot of things in my time, from mucking out chicken coops to wrangling gators, but today we're diving into a whole different kind of frontier, the hygiene habits of the Wild West. Yup, you heard that right. We're talking spittoons, outhouses, and everything in between. Now, you might think you know a thing or two about roughing it, but trust me, some of these practices will have you looking at history in a whole new light. So, saddle up, partners, and get ready for a wild ride through the grit and grime of the Wild West. All right, let's talk bath time. Now forget your fancy showers and your clawfoot tubs, because in the Wild West, if you were lucky, you had yourself a communal bathhouse. Picture this: a big old wooden structure, steam billowing out, and inside a whole mess of folks in various states of undress. Yeah, you heard that right. Men, women, and children all sharing the same water. Now I know what you're thinking. That sounds about as appealing as a mouthful of chewing tobacco. And you wouldn't be wrong. These bathhouses were often crowded. The water was rarely changed. And let's just say the concept of personal space hadn't quite caught on yet. But hey, when you're covered in trail dust and haven't seen a bar of soap in weeks, you take what you can get, right? Plus it was a chance to socialize, catch up on the latest gossip, and maybe even strike up a business deal or two. So, while it might not have been the most hygienic way to get clean, it was a way of life for many folks out on the frontier. It was a place where stories were shared, friendships were forged, and communities were built, one bath at a time. Now, if you think your local barber just cuts hair, you haven't met their Wild West counterpart. These guys were like the Swiss Army knives of personal care. Not only did they give a mean shave and a haircut, but they also pulled teeth, lanced boils, and even dabbled in a little bloodletting. Yeah, you heard that right. Back then, a trip to the barber could be a real gamble. See, doctors were few and far between in the Wild West, so folks relied on barbers for all sorts of medical procedures. Now, I'm not saying these guys were qualified surgeons, but they did their best with what they had. And hey, sometimes a little bloodletting was all it took to cure what ailed you, or at least that's what they thought back then. So next time you're getting a trim, take a moment to appreciate the good old days when your barber was also your dentist and your surgeon. Just kidding. Be grateful for modern medicine. It's a good thing we don't have to rely on barbers for medical care anymore. Let's talk about what happens when nature calls in the middle of the night. Imagine waking up in the pitch-black darkness, feeling that urgent need to relieve yourself. Now forget your fancy flushing toilets, because in the Wild West you had yourself a chamber pot. This was your go-to solution for those late-night emergencies, and if you're lucky, it wasn't already overflowing. Otherwise, you were in for a rather unpleasant surprise. These things were basically just pots, usually made of metal or ceramic, that you kept under your bed or in a nearby corner. They were simple, but essential, and let me tell you, they didn't exactly do wonders for the aroma of a room. The smell could be quite overpowering, especially in a small enclosed space. Now, disposing of the contents was a whole other adventure. It wasn't as simple as just flushing it away. Some folks just tossed it out the window, which, as you can imagine, made for a fragrant stroll down the street. You had to watch your step. Others were a bit more civilized and had designated outhouses or waste disposal areas. These were a bit more hygienic, but still far from ideal. But no matter how you sliced it, dealing with a chamber pot was a dirty job. Cleaning it was a task no one looked forward to. But hey, it was all part of life in the Wild West. You adapted and made do with what you had. And trust me, after a few weeks out on the trail, you learned to appreciate the simple things in life, like a sturdy chamber pot and a good strong nose clip. It was all about survival and making the best of every situation. All right, let's talk about dental hygiene, or the lack thereof, in the Wild West. Now, forget your fancy electric toothbrushes and your fluoride toothpaste, because back then, folks used whatever they could get their hands on to clean their pearly whites. We're talking twigs, charcoal, salt, and even gunpowder. Yeah, you heard that right. Gunpowder. Apparently it was supposed to whiten your teeth, but I have a feeling it did more harm than good. Now, it's no surprise that tooth decay was a major problem back then. Sugar was plentiful, and proper dental care was, well, let's just say it wasn't a top priority. So, if you had all your teeth in the Wild West, you were considered lucky. And if they were actually clean, well, you were probably the sharpest looking fella in town. Now, let's talk about body odor. In the Wild West, daily showers weren't exactly a thing. Heck, even a weekly bath was considered high maintenance. So, folks had to get creative when it came to masking their natural aromas. Forget your fancy deodorants and perfumes, because back then it was all about natural remedies. We're talking herbs, flowers, and even good old-fashioned dirt. Yeah, you heard that right, dirt. Some folks believed that rubbing dirt on their bodies would absorb sweat and odor. And hey, maybe it did for a little while, at least. But let's be honest, when you're living in close quarters with a bunch of other sweaty folks, a little dirt ain't gonna do much to mask the funk. In the Wild West, finding clean water was about as easy as finding a needle in a haystack. See, most folks got their water from rivers, streams and wells. And let's just say these sources weren't exactly known for their purity. We're talking animal carcasses, sewage and all sorts of other nasty stuff floating around. Now, boiling the water before drinking it was common practice, but even then, there was no guarantee that you wouldn't get a nasty case of dysentery or cholera. So, folks had to be careful about where they got their water and how they treated it. And if they were lucky enough to find a clean, fresh spring, well, that was cause for celebration. Because in the Wild West, clean water wasn't just a necessity, it was a luxury. All right, let's talk laundry. Now, forget your fancy washing machines and dryers, because in the Wild West, doing laundry was a back-breaking chore. First, you had to find a water source, which, as we've already established, wasn't always easy. Then you had to haul your dirty clothes down to the river, stream or well and get to scrubbing. And I'm not talking about your delicate cycle here, folks. We're talking washboards, lye soap and good old-fashioned elbow grease. It was a time-consuming, labor-intensive process, and it often took an entire day to wash, dry and iron all the clothes. So folks didn't wash their clothes as often as we do today, and when they did, they made sure to get every last bit of wear out of them. Now let's talk about everyone's favorite Wild West invention, the outhouse. These humble structures were a staple of frontier life, and they provided much-needed relief for folks who didn't have the luxury of indoor plumbing. Now, the typical outhouse was a small wooden structure with a single seat and a crescent moon carved into the door. And let me tell you, they weren't exactly known for their privacy or their pleasant aromas. But hey, when you've got to go, right? And besides, the outhouse was a great place to catch up on the latest gossip, read the newspaper, or just escape from the family for a few minutes of peace and quiet. Just try not to think about what's below you. All right, let's talk hair care in the Wild West. Now, forget your fancy shampoos, conditioners and styling products, because back then, folks used whatever they could find to keep their locks looking halfway decent. We're talking lye soap, vinegar and even bacon grease. Yeah, you heard that right, bacon grease. Apparently it was supposed to add shine and moisture to your hair. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd rather have tangled hair than smell like a side of bacon. But hey, to each their own, right? Now, it's no surprise that lice and other scalp infections were common problems back then, but hey, at least they had good-smelling hair, right? Finally, let's give a shout-out to the unsung heroes of Wild West hygiene. The women. See, in addition to all their other duties, women were also responsible for maintaining the hygiene of their households. This meant hauling water, doing laundry, cleaning chamber pots and trying to keep their families from dying of dysentery. It was a tough job, but somebody had to do it. And let's be honest, the Wild West wouldn't have survived without the hard work and dedication of these amazing women. So, next time you're feeling grateful for modern plumbing, laundry facilities and personal hygiene products, take a moment to thank a woman. Because chances are she's the reason you're not living in a pile of your own filth right now. Well, folks, there you have it. A glimpse into the not-so-glamorous world of Wild West hygiene. It may not have been pretty, but it was the reality for the folks who lived through it. So, next time you're complaining about having to take out the trash or clean the bathroom, just remember it could be a whole lot worse. You could be living in the Wild West without indoor plumbing, running water or deodorant. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed learning about these surprising hygiene practices, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more fascinating historical insights.